few weeks ago, we brought to you guys the re-release of the JDM version of our best-selling under $200 rod, the Megabass Levante. So today we are going to do a full breakdown of the entire JDM range. Now, if you guys paid no attention to me before, my feelings are hurt, but there is an entire line of JDM specific Levantes that are now available here in the US. We are going to do side-by-side comparisons, break the whole lineup down. They're still $199. It's an unbelievable deal. So if you'd like to geek out and learn about this set of rods, let's go have some fun. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle.
Oh, what a stud.
Yeah. Look at that.
That was sick.
Boom.
Cheers, my friends. Happy Sunday. All right, guys, some breaking news. What's to this week at the Hookup Tackle?
What a beautiful coastline fish.
Look at that.
Look at that gut on that. That's a nice fish.
Welcome, my friends. I'm Ben with the Hookup Tackle, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined by the one and only Jeffrey the King. Jeff,
Yeah.
hail to the king.
That's me. I am the Levante of Jeffries. Good quality, low price.
Okay, no maintenance.
No maintenance, green.
But these are fun.
Those are fun.
Yeah. So are you
Right.
the fun Jeff?
No,
Okay,
definitely not.
got it. So
Maybe there's another
You're
one
not
out
quite. You're not quite the Levante of Jeff's, but thank you
Physics.
for instantly. Okay. Here we go, guys. The JDM Levante. Now, if you guys if your eyes have been open for more than 3 seconds, you know about the Levante lineup from Megabass. It is their, I'm going to call it their entry-level rod. $199 throughout the entire rod lineup, but all of the tapers and actions have come from their other US actions like Orochi XX, Destroyer, so on and so forth. So, in Japan, they have their own set of Levantes because why not, right? So, we have finally got them updated and brought here to the US to where you guys can have the same Megabass warranty. They're available here. And I'm just going to break down the entire rod lineup for you so you know what's in it, what's similar to the US versions, what's different than the US versions, so you guys can decide if maybe there's some rods to fill in some gaps or maybe some rods to improve what you've been using now. Basically, we're just going to geek out on some rods so you guys know what they are, okay? So, we have casting and spinning models. We're going to start with casting, and I'm going to start on the heaviest powers and work down into lighter powers. I know that's opposite of how we usually do it, but all the heavier powers have US equivalents to them, okay? So, very quickly, before we start out, when I compare the US and the Japan versions, the US versions all have names to them, right? Leviathan, Achilles, Braillist, Perfect Pitch, these types of names, right? The Japan versions, no names, okay? Just the coding. So if you are new to Megabass rods, Megabass doesn't do traditional rod ratings as far as like power type ratings. They don't do mediums and medium heavies and heavies and that kind of stuff. They have their own system, which they call an F system, okay? So rods will be ranked by power based on their F number, F1, F2, F3, so on and so forth. The larger the number, the more powerful the rod. The lighter the number, the lighter the rod, right? The next group of numbers after the F number, for instance, is an F10. Then it will say another set of numbers, 711, for instance. That's 7 foot 11 inches, okay? So there you go. Here we go. Are you ready, Jeff? Jeff, you good?
You know what it just hit me?
What?
No, for no reason. We shouldn't even talk about this, but you know,
Thanks for bringing that.
the Japanese, they go off of meters.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised they don't have, instead of 7-Eleven, it's like 2 meters and
Or centimeters.
or like,
You're surprised that they do feet and inches instead
yeah,
of like
since-
millimeters
since
or
they don't really have that
centimeters.
stuff out there.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question or why that is. I guess it's just a stab at a universal system, but
System.
I'm going to study it and find out.
Interesting.
That's never been brought up. Man, your brain is working today. Nothing useful,
No, oh, just
but still, it's just something. You said something, so good job. Okay, we are going to start with the heaviest power rod in their line, which is this bad boy. This is the F10 711 LV. Now, there is an equivalent rod to that in the US version. It is also an F10 711 LV with the name Leviathan. Okay, so you guys know this as the big bait option in the rod line. I'm going to show you a side-by-side comparison here. Okay, so this is the Leviathan. This is the JDM F10 711. You can see the grip length is exactly the same. Okay, they are both ferruled at the grip. The only difference really here in the grip is you notice the Japanese version has that little contouredness on the bottom here in the foam for your fingers to have like an insert, which is pretty cool. The US version has a hook keeper, if that's a thing for you. Do you attach swim baits down here below the reel very often?
No, sir.
Jeff? Okay. So there you go. There are the differences. Now, as far as the blanks go, exactly the same color, almost identical guide spacing throughout the entire blanks. Lure rating is slightly different. So in the Japanese version, it's 3/4 to 6 ounce. And in the US version, it's 2 ounce to 8 ounce. Okay, now, the US version, we have touted this as being a great glide bait rod, especially for 199 bucks. It's probably one of the best bang for the buck glide bait rods maybe ever made. It's relatively parabolic and soft. So even down here through the middle of this rod, you can see I'm still able to flex it. When I flex it at the tip, it's got a nice load at the top. So you can throw anything from a larger shad glide to, you know, a K9 to a slide swimmer 250. All those, like, I would say realistically, even though it says 2 to 8 ounces, I'd say kind of like that 3 to 6 ounce range is where it's really going to shine. Just a great all-around glide bait rod. The Japanese version is faster. Okay, so I'm going to say it's more of a soft bait-esque style rod. So you can see it still has load at the tip, but it shuts down much quicker on the top end. So as I get down here to about the 10th guide, it's done. Okay, I got to really push, and then there's no bend as we get lower. So it's a faster rod. It's going to be more of a better option for, say, something like a Citizen, a Battle Shad, a Huddleston, something like that. So if you are already in the Levante Leviathan on the US side, you now have kind of a soft bait option rod to go with it. So now you have a great 1-2 punch. If you're looking for a soft bait rod, the Japanese one, the JDM one would be a great option. If you're looking for a glide bait option, I'd stay in the US version. Jeff, you are the swim bait guy.
Uh-oh.
Tell me if you have anything else to add, or if I am just the king and nailed it.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, so you see how you're flexing it and you feel how much it pushes back against you?
Yeah.
This is going to be something that you guys are going to experience in the JDM Levantes over the US versions. The US versions are built slightly, I'm going to call it slower, but it's with slight more bend throughout the taper. The JDM versions is a more responsive, kind of punchy graphite, so it's going to push back much faster. So even when they have a very similar bend, it's going to give you just a little bit crisper feel and a little bit more pushback on there, just a little bit more power. Okay, it's not necessarily better or worse, it's just slightly faster, a little bit more power, which may or may not be better for your use of the rods. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Be a good 1-2 punch, right?
that's the deal right
Yeah,
there.
if you wanted to stay in Levante, you got a $199 glide bait rod, you got a $199 soft bait rod. You kind of have both worlds covered. Now, I will say that even though the JDM version is rated 3/4 to 6 ounce, if you're throwing a 1 ounce swim bait or a 3/4 ounce swim bait,
Please don't do
don't buy this giant
Please, I will.
7-Eleven rod. Okay, you could throw it on a normal bass rod and have a good time, right? So even though it says 3/4 to 6 ounce, let's just, you know, so let's say 7-inch soft baits and bigger might need a rod like this. Like even for me, something like a 7-inch Citizen, this is still too much rod for me, right? But if you just insist on having a rod for a bait like that, this can handle it. But really, it's gonna be like battle shads, those 8-inch weedless, or you know, maybe just you need that longer rod for a big long cast. It can handle it. But there you go. There is the largest rod in the lineup. Jeff, I'm gonna hand these to you to get them out of my way.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We are gonna drop down 1 power, and this is the. Let me grab the Japanese version here. This is the F8 710 LV. Okay, so we have an 8 power F8 710 LV. There is a US version with the same rating, F8 710. So again, you can see handles and grips are exactly the same. By the way, the US version is called the Atlas. Okay, it's been in the lineup for ages. Again, they are going to look exactly the same. Lure rating wise, quite a bit different. Okay, so this time it's the opposite way. So on the Japanese version, it's 1/2 ounce to 4 ounce. On the US version, on the Atlas, it's 5/8 to 1.5 ounce. Okay, so the difference here is when you first bend these two rods, they are going to bend actually kind of similar. Okay, so the tapers, the guides, everything is kind of in a similar spot. So you can see, even as I bend these, very, very similar. But by the time I get to that first 1.5 feet, the Japanese one gets really strong. Okay, so the Atlas has always been kind of designed as kind of like a punching style rod. So it's a little bit softer, a little bit slower, you know, more designed for a bigger, larger weight, kind of punching, and the rod to absorb everything for you. The Japanese version is going to be more of a kind of slightly more universal. I've never been a huge fan of the Atlas. I've always wished they just deleted it because it's too soft for me. This kind of gives me the punch that I need in this length rod, so that if you're looking for a punching rod, it's actually got a little bit of power to it, which is nice. But it's light enough still to where you could throw a shad glide on it. You could even throw a weedless swim bait like what we just talked about, and get away with a little bit lighter rod all the way around. So for me, similar, but I would say just one slight step back from the F10 to give you just a little bit more versatility in some of that lighter stuff. So there you go. There's the F8 710 LV in the JDM lineup. As far as lure rating, even though it says to 4 ounce, I'm going to say this is like a 2 ounce is probably all you're going to want to go on this. So if you're throwing like a 2 ounce shad glide, something like that, great. If you're punching with an ounce weight or 2 ounce weight, great. But if you're really going to 3 or 4 ounces, go to the next rod up for sure. Okay, next in the line is the F7 72 LV. So this also has a US counterpart known as the Perfect Pitch. So again, I will show them side by side. The Japanese one's on top, the US one is on the bottom. So slightly different grip here, slightly longer grip now on the JDM version than the US version. Again, the JDM versions are all going to have this kind of contoured EVA foam, and the US versions are all going to have a hook keeper. I guess we love hook keepers. Biggest difference in this is the JDM version, again, is just going to be much faster. Okay, so you guys know the Perfect Pitch has always been kind of touted as obviously a pitching rod that can throw things like a 6-inch mag draft. A lot of guys will utilize it as a frog rod, but for me, especially in the Levante, it's just too soft for that, right? So Perfect Pitch has always had this really nice flexible tip up top, but it just continues in the Levante. So for something like a 6-inch mag draft, beautiful. But if you need to throw like a freestyle mag draft, it kind of bends too deep for me. Okay, if you need to throw a big spinnerbait, beautiful. If you need to throw a frog with braid, just kind of bends too deep for me, right? So this is where the JDM version for me really fills a niche. And in my opinion, this is probably the most needed rod of the entire line, because a frog rod, a true pitching rod that's true and fast and powerful, is definitely a rod that's been missing in the Levante lineup. This kind of delivers it to you. So you still get a little bit of tip at the top, but it shuts down quickly, right? And then you get to kind of a fast rod. So for throwing a frog, for pitching, for that stuff where you need that extra power, the F772 is going to be super sick. Spec-wise, it's 1/2 to 3 ounce. Okay, so it's built for that powerful stuff. You guys are really gonna love this rod for power fishing. So there you go. There's the F772 LV. That's a dope one. All right, going down one more power, we have the F670 LV. And again, there is an equivalent in the US version. This is known as the Tour Versatile. Okay, so again, you can see the grips are almost identical. Okay, same length on there. Again, not to sound like a broken record, but basically the difference here is this one's going to be slightly faster, slightly crisper. Now, the Tour Versatile and the US version of Levante is one of my favorite rods in the lineup. I honestly think, I know it says versatile in the name, but it's honestly one of the most versatile rods maybe ever made. Designed as a jig and worm rod, it is an F6 power, which would equate to kind of like a heavy, I guess, medium heavy plus maybe. But because it's in Levante, it tends to be a little bit softer. So this rod is capable of obviously throwing jigs and worms, but it's also capable of so many more things. If you need a 7-foot rod that can basically do everything from a jig to a worm to a spinnerbait to a chatterbait to maybe even a crankbait, that kind of stuff, this rod can handle it because of how it's built. It's an amazing rod. The JDM version, less versatile, but maybe better for just a jig and worm. So if you're looking for just a Texas rig, just a spinnerbait, something like that, then I would probably tell you to go with the JDM version over the US version, because it's faster, because it shuts down. It's more of a true traditional jig and worm fast action rod. Not going to give you the versatility that the US version gives you, but gives you a true fast experience. So lure rating 3/8 to 2 ounce on the JDM version, 3/8 to 1 ounce on the US version. So you've got a little higher lure rating on the JDM version. I don't always take lure ratings for exact science. Jeff and I know how a lot of these lure ratings are determined. Trust me, there is very little exact science that goes into it. Most of it is just tying a lure on there and seeing, oh, that feels pretty good. Let's go with that, okay? So, you could also use this rod as a frog rod, like a smaller Cara frog rod would be good. It does still have a little bit of a tip. But I'm gonna tell you 1 ounce is probably where you're gonna wanna live on this. If you really need to go to 1.5 ounces or a 2 ounce, whether it's Texas rig or pitch or something like that, I would do the F7 that we just talked about. But for this rod, for your traditional 3/8, half, 5/8, 3/4, it's got a real beautiful, crisp feel. So there you go, the F670 LV. All right, up next is the F572 LV. And again, there is a US equivalent to it. So the Japanese one's on top, US one's on the bottom. In the US, this rod is known as the Diablo Spec R. Okay, so again, cosmetically and the way everything lines up, the same. The difference here, the Diablo Spec R bends more through the middle. Have I said that yet in this episode, Jeff? This is going to be an interesting one to see who picks which one. I am a huge fan of the Diablo Spec R. I think it's one of the best rods in their lineup. If you guys are looking for a chatterbait rod, buzzbait rod, skinny dipper rod, larger square bill, that's where the Diablo Spec R shines. And the reason for that is it's a very smooth transition through the parabolic bend of this rod. So it's a powerful rod, it's strong, but the bend is just so easy and it bends all the way through the middle that it lends itself to a lot of things really, really well. Lure rating wise, it's 3/8 to 3/4, which pretty much handles everything. The JDM version is crisper and faster. You can see even when I start to bend it, it's almost more of a fast action rod than it is a parabolic. This is going to possibly be a better option for for like ripping traps out of grass. If you need something that just be a little bit more powerful, a little crisper, then this could be a good option. I will caution you that I would recommend you throwing probably fluoro on this instead of braid. A lot of guys get the Diablo Spec R to throw braid, and that softness of the rod kind of counteracts the stiffness of the braid. If you go with the JDM version, it's pretty fast. So if you have the fast rod and the fast braid, it might be too much fastness and not enough give, and you may experience some tip breakage if you're ripping too fast. So if you're a guy that likes to throw a trap on fluoro, lighter Texas rig, maybe a weightless Senko, this would also be an excellent rod for that. Lure rating, you're at 3/8 to 1.5 ounce. So again, slightly heavier lure rating here on the JDM version. Beautiful all-around rod. There you go, F572 LV. All right, and that is it for rods that have equals in the US from the JDM. Everything else we're going to talk about is going to be JDM specific. So let's start diving through them. So this is an F472 LV. So literally the same rod we just looked at, but in a full power back. Okay, so the last one was an F5. This is an F4, designed to be basically the same as the Diablo Spec R, but with it one power lighter. So if you think of the Diablo Spec R and how it bends through the middle, this rod does the same thing. It's nice and smooth, it has a gradual taper, it's very parabolic. So this is going to be a great addition to your US lineup if you already have the Diablo Spec R, but you need something just slightly lighter where the Diablo Spec R is going to shine for 1/2 ounce to kind of 3/4. This one will shine for that 1/4 to 1/2. Lure rating wise, it's 1/4 to 1 ounce, but it's really going to love throwing those 3/8 ounce crankbaits, the smaller square bills, your 1.0s, 1.5s, 3/8 ounce chatterbaits, some of that lighter stuff, lighter topwaters. It'll be an awesome rod for that. That's the F472. All right, next is the F468. Okay, now this is, of all the rods in their lineup, this would be the closest thing I would say to a true jerkbait style rod. Okay, so it's going to have a little bit of bend at the tip. Okay, it's not incredibly fast. Okay, it's a little bit slowed down, and then it gets a little bit quicker on here. If you look at the placard that Megabass includes with the rods, it's kind of showing that it's, you know, best for like a minnow shad, crankbait, lipless kind of stuff. This is one of those rods that, you know, it's nice, but I don't think it really is necessary in the lineup. Some of you guys might like it because of the length, so sometimes it is nice to have a shorter rod. So in the US version, we have the jerkbait special, of course, but it is 6'11". So if you want something slightly less powered, slightly shorter, maybe for throwing a 110 junior, something like that, this could be a great option. But remember, in Japan, most of their jerkbait fishing is not done the way we do jerkbait fishing, where we're, you know, jerking and twitching all the time. Most of it's done on a straight retrieve, where they're winding it, they're sweeping it. So this rod tends to be a little bit slower than what I would typically look for as a jerkbait rod. So I'm just going to consider this kind of a all-around okay treble hook style rod. Is kind of how I would rate it. Lure rating wise, again, 1/4 to 3/4, so it's right in where all the jerkbaits go. So the only reason I would get this is if you really just want or need a shorter jerkbait rod. Other than that, I'd probably stay in the jerkbait special that Levante already has. All right, up next is an interesting one. This is an F367 LV, 1/8 to 1/2 ounce, 6 to 12 pound lure rating or line rating. The reason I don't usually talk about line ratings, by the way, is I know how it's factored. It's just a recommendation like, well, hey, if you're throwing an 1/8 ounce bait, you're probably gonna wanna throw 6 to 12 pound line. Put whatever damn line you want on there, okay? Line ratings literally mean nothing to the rod ratings. Lure ratings give you a starting point to understand how much power or taper or where you kind of should be, but you make up your own mind on these things, okay? There's a lot of guys that pay no attention to that, and a lot of rods that have no ratings because they don't want to preconceive your brain with what you can or can't do, right? So at the end of the day, this is all up to you. I'm just sharing the specs to kind of give you an idea of where it is and my personal experience on what I think would be best for it. So this is an interesting rod because it's a little bit more, this is a very Japanese rod, okay? We don't throw a lot of lighter line, lighter Texas rig, finessey stuff on casting gear, right? Usually in the US, when we think of like finessey stuff, we usually just jump over to spinning and throw it. But this rod is built to be kind of a finessey, you know, light little jigs, small little worms, you know, Neko rig, light Texas, that kind of stuff. This rod is built for that. So it's got a nice soft tip so you can cast some of that lighter weight if you really were going to go down to an 1/8 ounce or 3/16. But you can see it's pretty fast, and then it shuts down. And then you've got kind of a fast blank to it. So really going to be a soft plastics rod, which is interesting from Megabass to do. In the Megabass world, this might be something like if you're going to Neko rig a little bottle shrimp, if you're going to throw a little tournament crawler around, maybe a small swim bait like a 3-inch spark shad and a little ball head, something like that could be good. But a cool rod that definitely has a place amongst the US lineup because it's very unique. Okay, so there you go. The F3 6.7 LV, that's that one. Okay, another F3. This is an F3 6.6 LV. So 1/8 to 1/2 ounce lure rating, so pretty much speccing the same. The difference here is this one's going to be built for smaller reaction. Okay, so you're going to have more of a true parabolic bend through here. You're going to have that softer all the way around. So this is going to be a really fun, I'm going to say more of a finesse reaction rod, not a bait finesse reaction rod, but a finesse reaction rod. So something to throw like maybe a Super Z1, little Karashi, a smaller Griffin, right? That kind of stuff would be really, really fun on this rod. It's short enough to where it could be a great shore banging rod. It could be a great rod for, you know, all kinds of different applications. It's a really cool rod and one that I'm excited to have. A very Japanese rod, right? This is a style of fishing that they do a lot over there. It's a style of fishing that's becoming much more popular here in the US. So definitely a gap filler for me and one that I'm excited to add to the Levante lineup. So there's an F3 6.6 LV. Okay, and then the lightest rod in their lineup, this is an F2 6.4 LV. So now we're kind of getting into that bait finesse kind of realm, 1/16 to 3/8. So I'm going to say this is right on the border of being a true bait finesse or just a finesse. It doesn't really matter, right? I mean, it can identify as whatever kind of rod it wants, right? But this is definitely the next notch below the F3 that we just looked at. So for throwing the bait finesse portal baits, this would be amazing. Small little top waters, Karashi, little baby pop X, little, you know, small dog X, all those kind of things would be brilliant on this rod. You could put a normal reel on here, like a normal 70 size reel, and throw a 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce stuff, or you could throw a little bait finesse reel on here and stick to that sub 1/4 ounce. So lots of different things you can do with it, but a really fun addition, the F2 6.4. Okay, let's jump over to spinning. 3 spinning models. Again, I'm going to start heaviest and go smallest. So nothing here really equates to the US version, which is nice because in my opinion, Levante makes some really nice spinning rods anyways. You got the Enforcer for your deep water fishing. You've got the Shaky Head for kind of your all-around fishing. You have your Whip Snake for your more finessey stuff. The downside to the Whip Snake for me, over the last couple years, the Whip Snake has gained a lot of popularity as being kind of like a jerkbait kind of rod. It's a little too light and wimpy for me, but it's not quite fast enough for me for like nose hook drop shot and that kind of stuff. So this rod is going to allow us to fill that gap. This is the F3 611 LV. So it's a much faster, more traditional style, what I would consider to be like a medium light, fast power. So you got just enough bend at the tip and you can see it shuts down. So for a true Neko rig, nose hook drop shot, you know, drop swim, a little hazardong shad, this rod is disgusting. So a must add to your spinning lineup, the F3 611. Just to spec it out for you guys, 1/16 to 1/2 ounce, so you've got a big lure range there. So there you go on that one. That's a no-brainer for me. All right, next in the lineup's a really interesting one. If you guys are big into finesse spinning, this is one that's going to have a lot of game for you. This is an F269, speccing out at 16ths to 3/8, so it kind of encompasses everything that's in a finesse realm. For me, this is basically what I would consider to be a finesse, I'm going to say a super finesse wind buster. Okay, it's the only taper that I can compare this to. So it is a gradual, slow, methodic, parabolic bend designed for being a finesse small jerkbait, little top water, right? If you guys are throwing those little 1/4 ounce or 3/16 ounce, you just need to make a cast and just have, little micro movements, little finesse movements, but then still need that rod to bend to keep those fish hooked on the treble hooks. This is a really cool rod for that. So not going to have as universal of appeal as, say, that last one that everybody in the world needs a nose hook drop shot rod. But if you guys like throwing little finesse plastics on, or hard baits, little finesse hard baits on spinning, this one is a no-brainer. So there you go, the F269 LVS. And then finally, if you just like going ultralight and you don't want to bait finesse it and you want to throw it on spinning, there is an F163, so 1/32 to 1/8 ounce. Okay, yeah, like I said, ultralight, okay. 1/32 to 1/8 ounce. So the only thing I could see you doing with this rod is, yeah, dude, if you were gonna take like the little Great Hunting 45 and go, fling it around a little creek or go do some, area trout fishing or something like that, then this would be a really, really fun rod. But that's really the only thing in the entire Megabass lineup that's applicable to this. Even if you get to the bait finesse portal stuff, go with the F2 or an actual bait finesse rod. But if you're looking for a small, light, delicate little trout rod, little crappie rod, something like that, this would be a really, really fun rod. And it's kind of an interesting addition that kind of rounds out the lower end side as far as power goes in these rods. So F163 LV, there you go. All right, guys, so that is a wrap. I know that was a lot of rods, but over the next few months, we will spend some time on the water with these as well and show you guys how certain ones apply to certain techniques. But again, use this as a guide to get you started, right? To give you some recommendations, but by all means, you figure out which rod is best for your style of fishing, because so much of personality comes into rods. It's the best thing in my life that I get to talk about because it's such a personal thing. How you flick your wrist, how much power you give, how weak you are, how strong you are, the way you hook set your line, all these different things apply to figuring out the right rod for the right situation. So if you guys have questions on anything that we covered, okay, from application to rod specs or whatever, drop them down below and I will get answers for you. Of course, the reason I leave my Instagram my Instagram handle in the beginning of all these videos is because I live there and I will answer rod questions for you guys 24/7. So if you ever have questions wanting to compare this to that, or what this is good for, or trying to fill out gaps, you can hit me up anytime. If you have bug bait specific questions, that's why I leave Jeff's handle on there. You can drive him absolutely crazy. Okay, so on behalf of myself and Jeff and everybody here at the Hookup Tackle guys, thank you guys for your business. Thank you for your support. If there's anything I can answer, you know how to reach me, and we will see you again soon. Enjoy the new Levante editions. Have fun on the water. Peace.